The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Andrea McMaster.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrea McMaster and thank you for joining us for this edition of Consider This. As the 2007 Nebraska legislative session comes to a close, the concerns about lack of experience are falling by the wayside. Because of term limits, there were 22 new senators this year, and there were concerns that the session would be dominated by lobbyists and Governor Dave Heinemann. But that didn't appear to be the case. There was a lot of accomplishments this year, and even veteran senators agreed that what needed to get done did get done. Well, we have three new senators joining us today on Consider This. I first want to begin by introducing Senator Tom White, and I appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Representing the Omaha area, so we're glad that you could be
Benson
here.
and Dundee,
right.
Largely.
And Senator Pete Persch, also from the Omaha area, and glad that you can be here as well.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
And Senator Amanda McGill from the Lincoln area. So glad that you could be here. And I really want to, first off, before we delve into the issues and what most people probably want to hear, the viewers out there, about what was accomplished this year, I want to talk a little bit about what it was like for you wearing these shoes for the first time as a senator. What was it like walking in your first day and as the session progressed? Were there any surprises?
I think they were all a surprise for me. Part of it was just sitting down there and realizing the history and the architecture. It was just overwhelming them at the start because you're in such a really special room. And then after that, everything else just to learn. And there's so much learning to be done.
I agree with that. It was a very a whirlwind process going from candidate and transitioning to representative, and there wasn't much time. I think that the leadership of the legislature did a good job with the orientation program, and that helped immensely to get up to speed so that we hit the ground running, so to speak.
The orientation process was very helpful, and we were the first class that really had a full orientation. They knew that there were so many new senators that they had to get everybody up to speed instead of just throwing us in blind like they did with a lot of senators in the past. But during that first week, we didn't even have offices, and so it just seemed like a mad scramble for a while. And there was just so much about the process that you don't really learn until you experience it firsthand or you don't fully process. And so I think that all of us are looking forward to next session now that we understand how the entire process works.
Well, we heard a lot of people talk about, oh, there's going to be a lot of wasted time. We're paying them to work for us, but they're going to have to be learning the ropes first before they can actually get something accomplished for us. Do you think that that was part of the case?
I think there's always a learning curve, but as far as learning, that's the cost of term limits. I think the people got new voices, new ideas, but they also had to accept that with that came inexperience.
I think the proof was in the pudding when you look at the major issues that was considered this year in the state legislature and look at who was active in leading the debates and shaping opinion in the body. Quite clearly, these incoming senators played a major role in that process. So I think that it was a very good job and that they already have played a significant impact in input.
And the freshmen really just had to dive in and learn the process quickly, and I think all of us did that. The one thing that we'll still miss is just that knowledge of previous relationships and previous issues that we didn't live through, which is where, you know, it's good to have some folks in there who've been there for a long time that remember, okay, these people have a grudge against each other for this reason, or this issue came up 15 times in the past, and you know, how can we alter it to make it better and actually pass this time through? And so that's one thing that, you know, I think that we'll all continue to struggle with a little bit, just learning all of the bits and pieces of issues and the history behind them.
Well, they said so much that really, well, some of the old senators, veteran senators that were no longer, became lobbyists themselves, and they were concerned that they would really dominate what got done in the legislature. Do you think that happened to a point I've heard it didn't happen as much as folks thought it was going to.
I think the events dominated the legislature. For example, the Omaha School Bill, the water bill for the Republican River. This legislature had some real issues that were very pressing that we just couldn't delay on, and we also had to respond to them. So certainly the experience, lobbyists, other people with special interests had a major impact. For example, the Omaha schools had quite a history that preceded any of our seating in the legislature, so you have to go back and listen to them. But I don't think that influence determined the final outcome at all. I think that education helped us reach judgments on our own.
You know, I'd concur, and I think the problems that needed solving really set the agenda in the legislature, and not individuals per se with their own individual type of issues or plans. And as Senator White mentioned, I think some of these issues have been percolating and been talked about in the legislature in years past, and so I really think that's why we focused on those issues and reached resolution this year.
I'm going to throw in here before you answer, Senator McGill, just that Speaker Mike Flood has been really highly praised for the way that he handled the new legislative session and the number of new senators this year. Do you think that that's also the case?
Oh, absolutely. I think Speaker Flood did a great job in setting up an agenda that seemed to flow pretty well. And we got to all the big issues and got through them, and I think made progress on most of them.
Okay. Well, let's get to some of the major accomplishments. I know that Senator White, you already alluded to a couple of them, but I want to delve more into them. We don't need to necessarily talk about tackling the water problems in the Republican River Basin as much, but I know that everybody is so interested in the school issue because even if you don't live in the Omaha, the Sarpy County area, it's something that people have been talking about and watching. Do you think the solution that you developed and ultimately passed is a good solution?
I think it has the potential of being tremendous. I mean, it has the potential of being nationally recognized as the way to save inner city schools and avoid the donut syndrome, where all of the achievement, the money, the prosperity is on the edges of the city and the interior is empty of those things. Will it work? That in large part is going to depend on whether or not those who are responsible for the execution set to it with a good will. If they set to it with a good will, are the tools there? Yes. Yes, it can work, and we can really truly become national leaders in this area.
Senator Persch, I know you've been talking to a lot of folks in your district as well.
I sure have, and I have kind of a unique district insofar as I represent an area that's composed of both Omaha Public Schools and Millard Public Schools. And I got to tell you, my viewpoint of this solution is it may not have been the solution that I would have exactly hoped for or desired, but it is better than the alternatives that would have gone into effect had not this bill been passed and this solution been crafted, and that is one city, one school district, and the alternative 1024 last year, which are more expensive plans, and they don't, I guess, get at remedying the harm that the legislation is intended to remedy, as well as this bill does. Now, that's not to say that I don't continue to have concerns about issues such as cost. The good thing about this bill is it will not go into effect until a point in time after next legislative session. So we're going to have an opportunity to get feedback from the people in my district and in the state about what changes need to occur to the bill to make sure that it flows perfectly. And again, those factors such as cost will continue to be a focus of mine. I think, though, that ultimately, if we're concerned about the children in socioeconomically deprived areas, it's going to take more than what we do here in the legislature to get the job done. We're going to need people out there volunteering as mentors, get a lot more community activism, look at programs like microloans and those kind of activities. But we can only in government be part of the solution. There's a lot more to the equation than us.
just so the viewers understand exactly what we're talking about, it is the concept of 11 district learning community, right? That's going to share in achievements and finances, and really hoping to integrate schools as much as possible in this 11 district area. So I know this is out of your area, Amanda, but I know that you paid a lot of attention to it. And what did you think, especially being one of the younger senators and fairly new, out of school? You maybe could relate a little bit more to.
Well, I absolutely agree with just about everything Pete said. And I grew up in Pete's district, actually. I'm a Millard North grad, and so I was very interested in seeing what happened. And I graduated in 1998. 10-year reunion is next year, and so it was relatively close to right now for me. And as far as the status quo was concerned, even back then, I knew that OPS just wasn't at the same place that Millard was, and that's a problem, because the kids in that school district deserve the same kind of education that the kids in Millard do. And in my mind, something had to be done about that. I, at one point, had thought about trying to get into OPS, because I live on that border near OPS. And the administrators there were shocked that anyone would want to get out of Millard to come to OPS because of the bad reputation and for education. And that alone is a problem when there are kids trying to get into one district to get out of another. And so in my mind, something did need to be done. The status quo was not okay. I don't think 1024 was the answer, but I think that this is a better step.
Well, really, it put us on the national scene, not in a great way.
No.
We had a lot of people looking at us saying, what are they doing in Omaha or Nebraska? They've lost their minds when it comes to education.
It was terrible. Businesses that had seriously thought about coming to Omaha determined that they would not. We were perceived as profoundly racist. We were perceived as people who did not care to have a multicultural society. And many people from other parts of the world were offended by it. 1024 did us great damage. I think this bill, and I really applaud the support of a lot of the suburban senators, because it took political courage, reverses that. And it really demonstrates an incredible will to try to reach out to every Nebraskan, wherever they live, to give them an opportunity to learn, whether they take it or not, whether they succeed or not. We can't control that. But what we can control is to ensure that they have the same opportunity. And so it took a lot of courage for Senator Persh and the other metro area senators to go this route. And I really applaud them for it.
What are you hearing? Your district is primarily Omaha Public Schools.
Almost exclusively.
So what are you hearing from the people in your area?
Renewed hope. They're very pleased they're not going to be broken up. Very pleased that there won't be just one school district in the area that will have laptops for kids, and others will have 20-year-old textbooks. Pleased to see that there's a renewed dedication not to leave the inner city behind, a renewed dedication that we're not going to ignore minorities. We're not going to exclude them. We're not going to isolate them. We're going to embrace them, and we're going to move forward together. So they're very pleased.
How about you, Senator Persh? It might be a little different from what you're...
Well, in looking at both the Millard Public School Board and the Omaha Public School Board endorse and support this solution, I think that they think of all the plans. Again, I think they analyze it the same way, that this is definitely the better plan than what the default would be, the 1024, the one city, one school district. And so they've expressed optimism that this plan can be implemented in a way that we can get the focus back where it should be, in the classroom, on the kids. I think a positive sign of this, that there's now, with respect to those lawsuits that have been waged back and forth, costing all the school districts millions of dollars, that now, in wake of this bill, that there is that those lawsuits will be terminated, and that for the first time in a long time, that meaningful relationships amongst the school districts can again foster, where they can work together and focus on kids. So I am very happy to see that there's an end to the lawsuits, and that school districts are working together for the kids.
But it is a wait-and-see issue. I mean, that's true. And if it's not working, the legislature could ultimately turn around and say, we've got to come up with another plan.
We always reserve that right to assess how program is being implemented. And again, as I explained, this will not take effect until after next session has started. So if in getting feedback and input, and that's always important with me, it becomes clear to me, and I think it is among my colleagues, that things are unworkable, that we need to make changes, then we'll do so. At least I'll certainly do so.
Okay, well, let's move on from this issue. I mean, we could probably spend the whole show talking about this. And I know it really dominated the legislative session, and it was an issue that you needed to spend a lot of time focusing on. But talk a little bit about personally coming into the legislative session for the first time. I'm sure you had somewhat of an agenda yourself of things that you would like to see done and accomplished. What are some of those things? And maybe we didn't get to them this year, but what would you like to see done, at least in your term?
Well, the biggest agenda for me was one driven by my constituents. They're deeply concerned about property taxes, and we did not, in my opinion, effectively address that. But we did expend $200 million, but the average homeowner in the Benson area with a home worth about $100,000 would see approximately $80 in tax credit on its bill, except that revaluations have occurred, and the average reevaluation in Douglas County has been 15%. I don't see any sign that they're going to drop mill levies, so the effective tax bill for these already hard-pressed citizens is actually going to go up. They looked to us to deliver meaningful property tax, and we did not, and that was deeply disappointing.
Okay.
I think meaningful tax relief is going to occur when local tax levying entities, and they're the ones who levy property tax, look at their spending processes and eliminate all the waste that can be eliminated and become focused on that. We as a legislature, because we don't impose property tax at a state level, it is really something that affects the local level, and I think citizens have to be in touch with their local elected officials and express their feelings with respect to the property tax and the proper balance. When it comes to the tax relief package that we passed, I was happy that it was $425 million, a large package. Again, this wasn't something that I was entirely pleased about. The form wasn't exactly the way that I'd like it to be, but I think any time that we're giving back nearly $500 million back to the taxpayers of money that we don't need to be spending at this point in time, that's a good day. Hopefully in the next session we can turn around and look at some other areas of tax relief that I think the voters would like us to address as well.
Okay. Senator McGill.
Well, if you talking to any of us new senators about campaigning, property taxes and taxes in general were the number one thing. They kind of covered that issue a little bit. But for me, looking at how much time we've spent on education, whether it be the OPS, Douglas County, Sarpy County issue, or Class 1 schools, which largely deal with issues of poverty, especially in OPS. I mean, that's really at the core of some of the issues there. I think that there's more that we can be doing in other ways to help address those problems and help people reach themselves out of poverty, whether through healthcare or other educational means. I know my priority bill this year that passed was a school fully funding the 5 cents for school breakfast from the state to each breakfast served, to help in other little ways to make sure that our children are being fed and their needs are being met so that they can learn better when they're in school even. So there are a lot of issues that are left to be touched.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit
Okay.
here. And since you are the youngest senator currently in the legislative session, talk a little bit about what was that like? What type of respect you received from your colleagues just walking in? Did you ever feel intimidated?
No one ever treated me differently, or I'd never felt like I was being treated differently. I was a little bit intimidated coming in those first 2 weeks. There was a little bit of, what am I doing here, going through my mind when I'm here with such great attorneys. I was a reporter like you were, and so I had a pretty broad base of knowledge when it came to a lot of issues in my own community in Northeast Lincoln. But I didn't have some of the degrees and experience that some of my colleagues did, and so it was a little daunting at first, but you learn what role you can play and what issues are important to you, and And being the youngest person, I got to be the E&R chair, which is an enrollment and review. It's moving some motions basically on the floor on a regular basis, but they reserve that for the youngest newbie. So I've had that privilege to get me up on the floor and speaking a lot and active in the process.
Okay, do you think that there was any benefits to, well, maybe that was one of being one of the younger senators, and also I guess we should say a young woman. That's even more unique in itself.
Danielle Nenkes and I are both under 30 right now as young women who were elected. And yeah, I think it's just nice for the body to have a variety of ages and genders and races. And we need to do a better job in doing that. We lost women in the legislature this time around. And so I get really excited when I hear about female candidates running, that are planning on running next year. Because I do think that the diversity of age and gender and race adds to the legislature and makes sure that all issues are being covered and all interests are being represented.
Sure, I'm sure you probably get a different pulse from the community that Senator White might from some of his buddies in the area. So yeah, but I'm going to talk about that. That was my next line of questioning I really wanted to get into is how do you understand what your constituents want? Is it them knocking at your door, or do you think that you have to spend a huge effort going out and meeting with them and sitting down and really trying to get the pulse of what they're thinking?
In my district, it's important that you go out and talk to them, so I do try to do that. When I was campaigning, I knocked on virtually every door of anybody who voted in the district at least once and many twice. And that's where I got an initial sense of what was really driving them. I continue to receive phone calls and emails. We send out newsletters. And then also, I go to Benson, go to the cafes, Joe's or Leo's, and they let you know what they're thinking. They're not shy. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where I get my information.
So you have to be out. You can't be hiding behind your door. And now that the legislative session is over for a while, going on a vacation outside of Omaha for the whole time. Huh?
No, you can't do that. And I don't think most politicians, that's their nature. You wouldn't be in this business if you didn't want to talk to your neighbors and kind of find out what was on their mind.
Senator Persch, I actually just met someone while we were preparing for the show, said, Senator Persch knocked on my door, the first politician that I've ever had knock on my door personally. So I know you have a fan here at the University of Nebraska Omaha already that was just because you did that.
Well, that was very nice. I tell you, it is important, as Senator White points out for me as well, to be in constant contact with the people you represent. I think the only way you can really do a good job in voting is having an understanding of the district that you represent. The only way to do that is to make efforts, positive efforts to get out there, go to the neighborhood association meetings, to do the door-to-door. People have busy lives. They're busy with their families, with work, and their community activities, and so it really, if you're a candidate, I feel that the burden's on me to get out there and to put myself in a position where I can ask them, what is it that you want to see me do down in the state legislature? What's wrong and what's right?
And I would think too that often we tend to have relationships with those that are in our same season of life or stage of life. Mm-hmm. So I would think that would take an extra effort to meet those that might be older than you or just in different areas or different interests, taking that extra effort. So Senator McGill.
Being an urban senator, I would get a lot of emails, but not a lot of phone calls to my office or handwritten or snail mail letters. I share an office with a rural senator, Senator DuBois, and she constantly has requests for appearances and meetings and all these phone calls. And in the rural areas, your senator it's a big deal. You're the person everybody goes to, but when you're an urban senator and represent only a part of a city, like for me, Lincoln, people tend to contact their city government for issues. They're the leaders that they go to first. So I think it's even more important for me then to get out and try to reach them. In the campaign, knocked 15,000 doors, and this summer myself and my staff, I think, are going to go out and do a little bit of that and stop and chat with businesses to get a feel and go to them, because at least with my district, they're not coming to me as much, but I still want to know what is on their minds and if they think what we're doing is on the right track.
How about getting an idea of what other states are doing, looking to other states for models? Is that necessary to do that?
Well, it's interesting. If I think it is helpful as we in the law look at when from a legal perspective. We do look to other states and in interpreting law, and so I think that concept kind of carries over in terms of creating law. I think it is helpful to see where a new problem-solving bill was implemented in a different state with a number of years to see how it's really panning out when the rubber hits the road. If it's not working out, then maybe it cast doubt on whether or not we should follow that. If it's going exceedingly well, maybe that's a good idea for us to follow down that path as well. So it is helpful.
Are you going back to, especially the two of you, to your careers outside the legislative session? I'm sure.
As soon as this interview is over,
Okay.
back to the office.
Okay. So we'll continue to be busy for you during this time. How about you, Senator McGill? What will you be doing?
Well, trying to reestablish a career. I was a television reporter, which I can't go back to. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle for me to find that right fit, because when you're in session for 5 months of the year, finding a job that will work around that is really difficult for a young person, and it really does prevent more young people from getting in there and running for office, with the pay being $12,000 a year. It's not enough to live off of, and I think almost everybody wants a career and to work hard even when they're not in session anyway. I certainly do, and so I'm still trying to find a permanent, long-term job that will see me through.
Okay.
And actually, that's kind of my case now. I was a criminal prosecutor for a subunit of state government for about a decade before I took the oath of office here in January. And there's a constitutional prohibition against someone serving in the state legislature
Sure.
for a subunit of government. So I actually had to resign my position with the city prosecutor's office January 1st. So we're just
So
kind of
two
back
senators
out to
looking
the,
for jobs here now. All right. No, I so appreciate it for everybody to get to know some of these new faces in the legislative session, and for Senator White, Senator Pete Pursch, and Senator Amanda McGill for spending time with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us, everyone, for this edition of Consider This. We're glad you could tune in.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.